How do you choose who to trust? Doesn't it usually come down to personal connection? Then why do only 25% of people trust a real estate agent when our job is all about connection? Sounds like there's something missing. Here at Story Real Estate, we're looking for people with integrity and a willingness to serve others. When people get to know you in this career, they should discover a genuine and helpful person who can guide them through tough times. If that's you, join us today. I'm Chris Carpenter, the owner and founder of Story Real Estate. Click the Learn More button and let's see if we have a career you'll love.
Hello, y'all. Welcome to Cross Politic. It's just Pastor Toby and the Water Boy. It's no Chocolate Knox. He's on the road filming some projects. So, sorry. You just get us. There's no worry about it. But that brings me to the fact that, join our club, support our pub, and make sure Knox doesn't leave us in the studio.
There you go.
There you go.
Van Gelder Technologies is a U.S.-based custom software development company specializing in cross-platform mobile applications, web applications, and desktop programs. Leveraging open-source frameworks, they quickly and efficiently build custom software solutions that are tailor-made to fit your specific needs. There's no need for new Christendom companies to be content with offering subpar mobile or web experiences. Van Gelder Technologies can help you build better software for the glory of God. You can learn more today and view examples of their work or get in touch at www.vangelder.tech. That's VANGELDER.TECH. Vangelder.tech.
That works.
Yeah, there you go.
That works.
We're technology and that's how that's the ad ends.
Technology
We're technology and. I think there's probably a few more words.
I think we have a bad pace there.
But
now you won't forget this ad.
That's
We're
right.
technology and.
We're technology and.
You. That means you.
Look it up and find out.
There we go.
We're really grateful to have Representative Jordan Pace of South Carolina from District 117. He's a barbecue, liberty, and theology enthusiast.
Oh, yes.
Jordan,
Praise the Lord.
Thanks for joining us on Cross Politic.
Thanks for having me.
What's your favorite barbecue sauce?
Oh man, there are South Carolina has 3 regional barbecue sauces, despite only having 5 million people.
Yep. Vinegar,
so my native
mustard.
Yep. Yeah, so in the Low Country, you got mustard. PD, you got vinegar.
Yep.
In the upstate, you got a tomato, and actually, if you go around Orangeburg, they have some weird fruit-based varieties. But
no, thank you.
I'm good with all of them. I will eat any smoked meat. I'm down.
Is he right? Is he right or is he wrong?
Yeah, I think
I'm a Yankee, so I don't know how these things work.
Their mustard barbecue sauce. Some of their mustard barbecue sauce is fantastic.
Yeah.
In fact, do you have your own recipe? Because I'd love whatever recipe you use because I'd like to try it myself.
If you're gonna buy store bought, there's Maurice's in the Midlands is pretty famous, and really any of the Bessinger brothers. There's like 4 of them. They're the mustard sauce.
Yeah,
because what I love to do mustard barbecue sauce on St. Louis ribs.
Yeah,
so good with of a garlic powder, salt, pepper base rub.
Yeah, that's not what this conversation was going to be about, Gabe.
I was going to keep going on, but if you have your own personal recipe, seriously, I'd love to. I'm wanting to make this summer is going to be a mustard barbecue summer for me. So
there you go. Are you done now?
Toby, do you have a question for Jordan?
Yeah.
Hey, if that baby's crying in the background, better be baptized. That's all. It can cry all at once. It just needs to be baptized.
Well, we're a little too Baptist for that, but we are Reformed Baptists. So
praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. That and mustard barbecue sauce.
Okay. So are you done?
You can go. You can go now. Yeah.
The thing that we were just, there's a bunch of stuff going on in South Carolina. Gabe and I were just hunting through your Twitter feed, actually, your X feed, and just trying to see what was going on there. And we noticed right away there's actually quite a few similarities, it seems to us, between Idaho and South Carolina.
Yeah, that's right.
Where you have a relatively kind of red state, relatively conservative state, probably even
super majority.
More,
super majority.
Yeah, heavy Republican majorities, and yet y'all are doing stupid stuff.
Like us.
And we have the Mormons to blame. But what do you have? So we found this one. Conservatives in South Carolina apparently voted to fund gummy bear sculptures and queer body drawings recently. Because
Republicans voted for that. I wouldn't say conservatives voted for that.
Okay.
In the budget 2 weeks ago, I submitted myself 45 or 46 amendments to the budget on the floor, which is more than normal. Usually there'd be, I don't know, 10 or 12 total for everybody. And one of them, or actually 2 or 3 of them, were about the Arts Commission, because we discussed the budget 3 or 4 days after that article came out. And they were trying to increase that Art Commission budget from $5 million a year to $7.6 million a year, so they could expand their operations. And I brought that up, that article specifically, shared it around and said, look, we have 500 plus bridges that are expiring. We haven't even attributed the money that DOT needs to get them fixed, like the recurring money every year that they're saying they need. And yet we're trying to increase gummy bear art and queer body art stuff by $2.5 million. I don't think that reflects the values of most South Carolinians. Let's cut that. Not even really. I didn't even try to cut the Arts Commission. I just said, let's keep it at $5 million and take that $2.5 million along with some others and move it into roads. And they said, no, we're not going to do that.
So why? I mean, why are Republicans in South Carolina voting for this stuff? Why are they not saying, "Oh, that was in that bill. We don't want to increase funding for queer body drawing"? I mean, why are Republicans not? I mean, in South Carolina,
right? So the misconception there is that we're run by conservatives. We're not. We're run by the Unit Party. It's the moderate Republicans, and then the Democrats form a working majority in the state.
Wow.
Where on the Ways and Means Committee, for example, the subcommittee that came through the Arts Commission came through the Economic Development Subcommittee, which is chaired by a Democrat. Even though we have a supermajority of Republicans in the House, we've got 2 Ways and Means subcommittees that are chaired, and a majority of that subcommittee is run by Democrats.
Wow.
It makes no sense to me.
No.
Part of it is, I say a huge part of that that we saw at the very beginning of last year was the growth of the Freedom Caucus Network, which I know you all have a pretty strong faction of that in Idaho.
Yeah, and it's growing. Yep.
Heather Scott. Yeah.
Yep.
We had 13 at launch. We're up to 16. I think we're going to have more, but just our existence really has in many ways pushed things in the right direction, but it also has put the leadership on notice that have done this kind of stuff forever, that we want it to change, and we're going to fight about it, and we're not just going to sit back. So the reason that, okay.
I was just going to ask, so how many representatives do you have a House and a Senate in South Carolina, and then how many members of each? And so what are the ratios?
Yeah, so it's 124 members of the House. Yeah. And then I believe we got 46 members of the Senate.
Okay.
The 124 in the House, I think we have 77 Republicans and 36 Democrats. Is that math right up? Yeah, we got 1 vacancy right now.
Okay.
So we have 16 members of the Freedom Caucus. Now, in the January of last year, we had this falling out where they changed the rules of the House caucus. So for 100 plus years, the rules of the House caucus of all the elected Republicans was you show up, you pay your dues, and that's about it. And they were very loose. But since the Freedom Caucus popped into existence, they added this rule about not being able to campaign against other elected members of the House. So you couldn't endorse a challenger to somebody else who's in the House caucus, even if it was your son, your brother, your best friend. We asked all those questions, and they said, yeah, if it's anybody, you can't support them. You can't take pictures with them. You can't endorse them. They even said, like in this meeting, like taking pictures of the voting board, how we all vote, taking pictures of that, putting it on the internet is against, could be against the rules too.
What?
So there was a bunch of us that wouldn't sign it. And ever since then, there's been this split and this ongoing, I won't say war, but struggle kind of for the heart and soul of the Republican Party within the state. And we saw this past Monday, yesterday at noon was the cutoff for filing. So around the state, we have a record number of contested primaries. Yep. I think the most since like the 1800s. we're going to have a test this summer about what direction the party's headed, and I'm generally optimistic.
Wait, so
that means they got a bunch of Freedom Caucus people going against the rhinos or whatever you want to call them.
Potentially, yeah. I don't know if they're all Freedom Caucus, but many of them that I've talked to have said that the fight that you guys are fighting, whether it's the 45 amendments on the budget this year, last year we had over 100 amendments where we tried to cut tens of millions of dollars of DEI spending at the universities, and they wouldn't do that either. But those are the kind of things that they've said have inspired them to run. So even if they don't know what they're doing.
So these new caucus rules, though, did I understand you right? So you as an elected House member are not allowed to say which, like in these
who voted for who. You can't paste it on the internet.
No, but in these upcoming races, in this primary, are you allowed to endorse the candidate that you think is the best candidate?
I can, because I refuse to sign the rules.
But they were trying to
physically.
So this is like Republican rules.
Yeah.
These are like House Republican caucus rules.
I see.
That they instituted new.
But so you didn't sign it. So you're saying I didn't agree to those rules. But did we hear correctly that there was at least one House Republican that was kicked out?
Oh, all of us that refused to sign it were kicked out. Physically, we were physically barred by the majority leader. Like, he put his arms out and put hands on one person to stop us from coming into this second caucus meeting after we refused to sign it.
Okay. So you're not in, like, you're Republicans, but you're not allowed to be part of the caucus party.
The priests.
Right. I have, this is my first term in the House. I've been to one caucus meeting, which was when we refused to sign those rules. Yeah. And they haven't allowed any of us that refused to sign it to come back since. So the one caucus meeting I went to, I got a standing ovation for beating a Democrat who was an avowed like socialist.
Yeah.
Beat her by 30 points, and then they wouldn't let me come back.
he got the clap, and then that's it.
They're like, wait a second.
So, Jordan, I think our listeners that are tuning in, right now, legislative session is going on in your state right now. Mm-hmm. Our state, so forth. It's pretty much, I think every state has legislative session happening right now. In our state, we have a similar fight between the Freedom Caucus and the rhinos or the old guard or whatever you want to call them. And this year, because the Freedom Caucus has put a dent into things, the old guard has now raised millions of dollars to fund races at the precinct level. So I've been a precinct leader since 2014, 15. I can't remember my dates that and I never had a challenger.
Yeah.
This year I passed my baton off to a neighbor of mine, and he has a challenger in May.
Okay. For a precinct leader. In fact, almost all our precinct available slots have a race. Yeah.
Which is unheard of at least in my county. I don't know what it looks like statewide, but
unusual.
It's pretty unusual.
Yeah.
And so there's something like 958, something like that, precinct positions.
Okay.
And they're funding, millions of dollars of funding are going down to the precinct because the old guard doesn't like the inroads that we've made into the party. And so they're going right to the grassroots. And this is where, like, taking care of your community, loving your neighbor means paying attention to what is going on all the way down to the neighborhood level.
Yeah.
Look around, find who your precinct leader is, figure it out, and then just vote in May, because it actually has major implications of what happens at the top. Yeah. It's incredible.
Are you seeing similar things in South Carolina, Jordan?
Yeah. So there's a couple of dark money groups like 501c4s that you can't tell who's giving them money and who's operating them other than whatever attorney registered them. They spent collectively well over $1 million over the last year doing mailers and text message, like phone like fake surveys, attacking Freedom Caucus members.
Trump
trying
just
to
asked me, Trump before the show just texted me, tell me to fill out a survey. He literally did. I think it was Trump actually
with Trump himself,
exclusive from Trump.
So because of that, I'm trying to remember how many there were at least 3 full page mailers that went out in all of our districts, probably 5 text messages per member.
Wow.
So like 14 of the 16 of us have primary challengers. providentially, I don't. I mean, purely attribute that to the Lord's hand, but they recruited 10 to 12 members, or people who run against our members. But on the other side, because of their antics and because of the stuff that they've done and the lack of action that they've done on the floor, we've got 30 people that have signed up to run against kind of the status quo incumbents.
Wow.
So that's why I'm tentatively optimistic. I think we can, with the support of the grassroots and strong conservatives, we can hold our seats and then gain some more. And that's really what could really be a fulcrum of change in South Carolina, to get away from the gummy bear art and crazy wasteful spending and Green New Deal. I mean, our Department of Commerce and governor is just obsessed with electric vehicles, battery plants. Last year we gave $1.3 billion in cash, not tax rebates, like cash out of the Treasury, to Scout Motors, to Volkswagen, to build a electric truck and SUV.
A foreign business
plant. A foreign business, right, with a history of not so great financial management. And I asked a couple, I voted against it. I was the only person to ask a question on the floor when we passed it. And it passed in 9 days. Like, from the time we heard about it to the time the governor signed it was less than 2 weeks. And I asked a couple of members, like, do you know who started Volkswagen? And they said, no, it's German, right? I said, the Nazis. The Nazis started Volkswagen. Do you know about the billions of dollars of fines that they've got from the EU and the US, and they still haven't paid all those off? 400 million of that 1.3 billion was just a cash grant to Volkswagen, to Scout. Just here's $400 million from the taxpayers to build your plant. And they told us, hey, it's going to be 4,000 jobs. I asked to see the agreement because I work in commercial real estate when I'm out in the legislature before we voted on it. And they said, no, it's confidential. You can't read it until it's voted on and signed.
Unbelievable.
It's very Pelosi, right? Yeah. You can vote on it, then read it.
Yeah.
When I finally got my hands on it, the Scout doesn't have to produce 4,000 jobs. They only have to produce like 400 jobs. All their suppliers and stuff they think will bring 4,000. So the whole thing was just bunk.
Wow.
That's kind of par for the course in South Carolina, and that's the kind of stuff that we're looking to stop.
You guys are aware that we have a new app, right? If not, you should download it right now. Head on over to your favorite app store, type in Cross Politic or Fight Laugh Feast or Pub TV. And once you find the app, you might need to update your app, or if you have a Droid phone, you may need to delete your current FLF app and re-download it. But once you download it, you'll be able to view or listen to all our content right on your mobile device. Every show, backstage content for pub members. As always, if you'd like to sign up for a pub membership, head over to fightlaughfeast.com. Go to fightlaughfeast.com. Become a pub member. Fight Laugh Feast Pub is our app, but then if you become a club member, a pub member, you get access to all our conference talks. You get access
discounts to our conference,
to our backstage conversations with many of our guests, and you get discounts to the Fight Laugh Feast conference.
So, Jordan, why is I guess two things. What have you seen as a legislator with Christians being involved in politics? Has it been pretty weak sauce? Mm-hmm. Is it pretty difficult to get them out to vote? That kind of thing. Secondly, why is South Carolina strategic to our nation? I think Idaho is, in terms of conservatives owning it and running it, and Christians running our state. Is South Carolina, why would South Carolina be strategic to our nation?
So we'll answer the second question first and then go backward. Yes, I think South Carolina is, one, because we have the first in the South presidential primary for the last 50 or so years. So presidential candidates always come through South Carolina. We get a lot of FaceTime with them, and it can have a lot of influence there. Yeah. And then the other side, on the economic level, is we have the Port of Charleston, which is just down the road from the district that I represent. That's one of the, I think, 2 or 3 ports on all of the East Coast that can handle the big super tankers that come through the Panama Canal now. So we're seeing crazy amount of growth in industry and distribution just because of the port. Mm-hmm. So on a political level, though, beyond the presidential, and very much like Idaho, any state where the conservatives or where Republicans have a super majority in both houses, have the governorship, should be leading the way, like Florida's doing, on on these conservative policies and setting that standard and pushing that Overton window, whereas the left is just a lot more strategic about it. And this goes to your first question: are Christians active? Yeah, I think a lot of them are. Are we wise like serpents and gentle like doves when we should be? Most of the time, no, we're not. We don't have that serrated edge that we should, and apply it as necessary. We're too nice. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate what you guys have done. I've listened to Cross Politic for 4 or 5 years since y'all were on satellite TV and before any apps or anything like that. So, and big Canon Plus subscriber. Wow. The stuff that y'all are doing are helping intellectually Christians all over the country and in pushing that narrative and pushing that over to window, because the left's good at it. The left, I mean, they use all these rules for radicals for the last half century very effectively. We have a better playbook in the Bible that we should be using, that historically Christendom has used, and we shouldn't be ashamed of it, and we should put it into practice. Because it's better for everybody.
Yeah. One of the things that the left has done, I think, is they've understood the necessity of discipleship. I think maybe far better than we have, which is silly and insane, since the Bible is all about discipleship. But I mean, the left captured, the sort of long march through the institutions that the cultural Marxists, envisioned, and basically said, if we want to take this country, we got to take the schools. And then from the schools, we're going to take the other public institutions. We're going to take the family, and we're going to establish a kind of a culture that then is going to produce a certain kind of political fruit. And and in many respects, they did that. They called that shot, and they've done that. And so we're behind the 8 ball in a lot of ways. And so a lot of what we see, I think, in Idaho and South Carolina are the fruit of that, where a lot of our churches, a lot of our families, like, we are being discipled by Netflix. We are being discipled by Disney.
Public schools.
We are being discipled by the government schools.
Yeah.
And so obviously we've got kind of a 2-front war, where we've got to go to the State House, and we've got to stop the worst stuff from getting passed and offer the
by conservatives, apparently Republicans.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, we've got to be reversing the discipleship process and planting a lot of seeds, raising our children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, establishing a Christian community and church centered community, worship centered communities. What's the state, what's the cultural state of South Carolina, and how do you see that playing into the task in front of you?
Yeah. So geographically, South Carolina's, much like our barbecue sauces, is got some distinctions. Yeah. On the coast where I'm at, and up into like Myrtle Beach, we have this huge, crazy huge influx of folks from up north and some from out west, but mostly up north that have gotten trying to get away from the crazy. Yeah. I think a lot of that's a result of COVID, whether they're moving their kids down, their homeschool families, or they're just retired or close to retired and want to be done with it. Those folks surprisingly have been the most active politically, and particularly the ones that are believers. Yep. They get down here thinking this is like conservative paradise when it's not. And once they kind of are aware of that, they're the ones that I've seen jump into the fight the most to stop us from progressing to the crazy. In the upstate where I'm from originally, politics is much more of a common kitchen table issue. So it's much more raucous and fractious, and maybe that's where I get it from, just being engaged more. That I think is still holding on to that more than the rest of the state. I honestly blame a lot of it on a lot of the apathy on this, the neo-pietism of this isn't our home. We're just here to either till the rapture comes in 1988, even though it didn't, or we're not getting involved. We're just going to be very pious and live our lives and kind of off to ourselves. That I think is more to blame for the local, like for the people that are from here, on the apathy more than anything else. So the good thing is we got folks that are planting churches and revitalizing churches all over the state that are pushing back against that are saying, this is our home now. When the new heavens and the new earth are coming, but our job isn't just to wait for those to come. Our job is to spread the gospel. Like we've done it before. We can do it again. That is the playbook. So I'm optimistic there too on the cultural sense. But politically and culturally, I think we're heading in the right direction.
I got one last question here. Me and Toby and Knox went and spoke at a conference down in Lafayette, Louisiana, and I remember driving around Lafayette. There's towns around Lafayette. Lafayette's probably the biggest town, but I remember driving around in Lafayette and some of the surrounding towns, and just thinking like, man, how strategic is rural America to take over? There's where we were at. There's a lot of buildings that were abandoned. And so the access and ability to buy buildings. Now there's a large workforce there. Part of the problem with the workforce though, there is that a lot of them had been co-opted by the government funds, social welfare and stuff like that.
Programs.
But there's, but disciple them and you got a workforce right there. And so it seems to me a lot of like rural America is actually far more strategic than we realize. Building businesses, taking over towns, revitalizing what was once there, planting churches, all that stuff. I mean, is that kind of like, in contrast, a lot of our cities are just taken over by the liberals.
Right.
And of course we don't abandon the cities either, but it just seems like there's some really strategic opportunities right now in some of these smaller cities, like we're in Moscow, stuff like that. How do you see that landscape there in South Carolina?
Yeah, I think we're starting to organically do that. I've got younger-ish pastor friends of mine. I went to Charleston Southern University, so I got a political science and religion degree. I'm the world's worst dinner guest. That's the only two things I'm going to talk about. But a lot of the guys who went on to seminary that are now pastors, they're in their 30s and 40s, are now moving out to those not quite suburbs, right past the suburbs, where it is still affordable to live and to really have a lot of impact per time and dollar spent. To get ahead of the growth, because we know where the growth's going. It's going to go up the interstates, it's going to go up the highways, and establish there, whether it's Christian schools or just strong disciple-making churches,
right?
And having a big impact. And I'm very encouraged by that. A lot of those guys, we were in college, we were reading, the Ligon Duncans and the Tim Kellers and Why Cities Matter. I mean, I've got it somewhere behind me on the bookshelf,
right?
And they do matter, like you said, but if you have limited resources, you can apply those resources a lot more effectively and a lot more efficiently in those kind of areas. We're starting to.
That's good.
Okay. So we're going to end the segment. Do you got a couple more minutes?
Yeah, sure.
All right. I want to, you just said Ligon Duncan. And so I just feel like
we need to ask a question around that.
We should ask.
There's a question there somewhere.
There's a question there, and maybe Tim Keller too. I mean, related. I mean, I'd like to hear maybe some of that. Yeah. Where can people go to follow you, Jordan, or track with what you're doing there in South Carolina?
Yeah, so two places, jordanpace.com. Particularly if you live in South Carolina, I do an email newsletter about what's going on in the State House. I usually try to do it every 2 weeks.
Jordan Pace, P-A-C-E.
P-A-C-E.
Yep.
And then we also, a friend of mine who I'm Reformed Baptist, he's of the more charismatic Pentecostal variety. We started a podcast very similar to you guys, but South Carolina specific, about how politics and faith intersect, called The Current Situation. So if you go to currentsituationpodcast.com, you can follow that along there.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it. We'll see you in the backstage here in a minute.
Sure.
So if you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. If you have kids and they're crying in the background because they want to get baptized, that's why they're crying.
Yeah.
You should go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politic without Knox.
So here's the question, Jordan, and you can answer this however you want.
You sit in church week after week, embracing the truth of God's word. You believe the gospel and claim Jesus Christ as your Lord. Yet you continue to struggle with pornography. You feel like a hypocrite, returning to the sin you hate that mocks the God you love. You desperately wonder, is lasting freedom even possible? Yes, you can overcome pornography, but not alone. 2 Timothy 2:22 says, "Now flee from youthful lusts and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart." Only by repeatedly running from sin to Christ with other believers can you hope to enjoy lasting freedom. You can live with purity and integrity. Take courage, seek accountability, and do whatever is necessary. Get equipped at accountable2you.com.